Virgin, only 18, caught between a drug, barren and a ruthless billionaire. Who will take her hand in marriage? March became April, the way New York Aprils arrive, grudgingly with cold mornings that forgot to become warm afternoons. The city still wearing winter around its edges, even as the trees made their tentative arguments for something better. Cleopatra had been meeting Marcus for coffee every Saturday for 6 weeks. She had been sitting on the wall with Zion every Thursday for the same. She had not told either of them about the other meetings. Not because she was hiding it. The arrangement had been established openly on the first Sunday. Both men had agreed to a fair courtship. But because those separate hours felt like separate rooms inside her, and she needed to keep them that way while she figured out what each one meant. Kezia, Arn, who required no such privacy, had a running commentary. "The thing is," Kezia said on a Wednesday night, cross-legged on Cleopatra's bed while Cleopatra pretended to organize her closet, "they're both doing the thing." "What thing?" "The thing where they act like they're not trying too hard while clearly trying incredibly hard." "Zion doesn't try hard." Cleopatra moved a hanger for no reason. "That's the whole point of him." "Oh, so now there's a whole point of him." "That's not what I meant." "You literally just said the whole point of him." Kezia's voice climbed toward delight. Cleo, you have a whole point of him. I'm going to need you to leave. You also have a whole Saturday morning with Marcus that you get dressed for 30 minutes early. I get dressed 30 minutes early for everything. In the cream turtleneck specifically, it's a good turtleneck. It's a strategic turtleneck, and we both know it. Kezia flopped back on the bed, grinning at the ceiling. "You like them both." Cleopatra stopped pretending to organize the closet. She stood with her back to Kezia and her hand on a jacket she wasn't seeing, and felt the truth of that sitting in her chest like something that had been there for a while and had just agreed to be acknowledged. "I don't know what I feel," she said finally, quietly, "and I need that to be okay for right now." Kezia's voice, when it came, had lost all its teasing. "It's okay," she said. "Take all the time you need." The turning point with Marcus came on a Saturday in early April that started like all the others and then didn't. He was already in the booth when she arrived. 8:14, she had maintained the 1-minute margin every single week. It had become a thing between them, unspoken and understood. He had a coffee waiting for her, also as usual, and he looked up when she came in with the expression he'd developed over 6 weeks of Saturdays. Something warmer than his default. Something he didn't seem to fully control when she walked into a room. She had stopped pretending not to notice that. They talked for the first hour the way they usually talked. Wide-ranging, challenging, the kind of conversation that required full attention. That she always walked away from feeling like she'd used her mind in ways it didn't get to use at the laundromat. He was telling her about a development deal in Brooklyn that had gone wrong in 3 different directions when he stopped mid-sentence. "Can I ask you something personal?" he said. She raised an eyebrow. "More personal than the age gap conversation?" "More personal than that." She set her mug down. "Ask." He was quiet for a moment, organizing something. She could see it, the way he organized everything before he deployed it. But then something shifted and she realized he wasn't organizing. He was trying to decide whether to be unorganized, which was different and rarer. "Do you ever feel like you've built your life to be so self-sufficient," he said slowly, "that you've made yourself somewhere no one knows how to enter?" The question landed differently than she expected. She looked at him. His eyes were on his coffee cup, not her, which was also different. Marcus was a person who maintained eye contact as a matter of discipline, and the absence of it now meant something. "Yes," she said carefully. "Why?" He was quiet for another moment. "I've spent 20 years building things," he said. "Companies, portfolios, structures." He turned the coffee cup slightly in his hands. "I'm very good at it. I'm good at most things that don't require—" He paused, found the word. allowance for vulnerability. He looked up then. I don't know how to need people. And I removed that capacity a long time ago because it was inefficient and it hurt, and I was 22, and I thought those were sufficient reasons. Cleopatra was very still. This was not a prepared speech. She could tell the difference now. Had spent enough Saturdays watching him to know when he was presenting and when he was just talking. This was just talking. This was something that had decided to come out before the control caught it. What happened when you were 22? She asked, a long pause. My mother got sick, he said, back in London. I'd come to the States on a work visa. I'd just started building something, and I had to make a choice between going back and staying. He stopped. I stayed. Did she? She recovered, he said. She's fine. She's in London. She's fine. He said it quickly, like he'd had to say it quickly before to stop a certain kind of concern. But I didn't go back, and she recovered, and I'd made myself into something that prioritized the work, and I told myself it was the right choice, and I've been telling myself that for 16 years. He looked at his hands. She's never said a word about it. That's almost worse. Cleopatra sat with that for a moment. She thought about her own mother, about Ruth's photograph in her purse. She'd started carrying it everywhere, a habit that had formed without announcement, about the specific kind of regret that lived in choices made under pressure that you never fully got to make again. I understand that, she said. He looked up. Not the exact thing, she said, but the structure of it, making yourself smaller than your feelings because the feelings are inconvenient. She paused. I've been doing it since I was 12. After my mother died, I just compressed everything, became very organized and very contained and very capable, and told myself that was the same as being okay. Is it? He asked. No, she said. It's just better looking not okay. Something crossed his face, something that wasn't the controlled expression or the almost smile or any of the faces she'd cataloged over 6 Saturdays. Something that was just recognition, the pure, simple kind. How did she die? He asked gently. Ovarian cancer, 14 months from diagnosis. She said it the flat way she'd learned to say it, the way that kept it from reopening completely. She was 41, I was 11. Yom, my dad, he never really put himself back together after. He just kept moving and called that living. I'm sorry. I know. She believed him. She was extraordinary, the kind of person who made everyone feel more themselves when she was around. She paused. I think I've spent 7 years trying to be enough of her and enough of myself simultaneously and not quite managing either. Marcus looked at her for a long time. You manage both, he said, quietly, with a certainty that was not the boardroom kind, but something more personal, more earned. More than you know. Cleopatra looked out the window at Fordham Road. Her throat was tight in a way she hadn't expected, and she wasn't going to let it become anything more than that. Not here, not yet. But the tightness was real, and she let herself feel it for a moment before she breathed it back down. You should call your mother, she said. He was quiet. I know, he said. Not for her, for you. So you stop carrying it like it's already too late when it isn't. He looked at her with an expression she hadn't seen on him before, something younger than his face usually allowed, something with the slight rawness of a person who has been told an accurate thing by the right person at the right time. When did you get this wise? He said. I've always been this wise, she said. You just needed 6 Saturdays to create the conditions for me to deploy it. That got a real laugh, a short, genuine one that changed the whole shape of his face and lasted only a second and a half but was entirely unguarded, and she filed it somewhere she intended to keep. They walked out into the April cold an hour later and stood on Fordham Road, and she looked at him in the thin afternoon light. Navy coat today, the low cut freshly done.
If you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow and lets me keep bringing you more amazing love stories. All right, back to the story.
Looking like two different people simultaneously, the controlled one and the one who had just told her about his mother, and felt something she couldn't quite name, but was related to tenderness. Same time next week, he said. Same time next week, she confirmed. He walked to his car. She walked to the subway. And this time, on the third step down, she looked back. He was still standing by the car, watching her go. He lifted his hand slightly. Not a wave, just an acknowledgement. I see you. She turned back to the stairs. Her heart was doing something complicated. The turning point with Zion came 4 days later and arrived, as things did with him, without announcement. It was an evening Thursday. She'd swapped shifts and finished at 7 instead of 4, and she was walking home from the subway when she turned a corner and found the block cordoned off, 2 police cruisers, a small crowd of neighbors gathered at the tape. She wasn't alarmed. Bronx police presence was ordinary enough. But she stopped with the crowd and found herself standing beside a woman she didn't know, and then found herself standing beside Zion, who appeared at her left shoulder with the same uncanny Thursday timing that had stopped feeling coincidental several weeks ago. You're on the wrong block, she said. Your block, he said. And I know. She looked at him. He was in a dark green jacket, no gold threads today, expression reading the police tape with the particular alertness of a man who had his own complicated history with law enforcement and never fully stopped reading rooms. Are you okay? He asked, meaning the cordon street. I live on the next block, she said. I'm fine. She paused. Are you okay? He turned to look at her, and something about the question, the direction of it, her asking him, with her genuine concern aimed at him instead of at herself, seemed to catch him in an unguarded moment. Yes, he said. Then after a pause, no, not exactly. She waited. He looked at the police tape for a moment. Someone I grew up with, he said. He's been arrested. 3rd time. He was quiet. The 1st time I got him out. The 2nd time I got him out. And this time, he stopped. This time, she prompted softly. This time, I don't know if getting him out is the same as helping him. He said it with a flatness that she understood was not emotional absence, but emotional suppression. The same register she used for her mother's sentences. Sometimes I think the kindest thing I can do for the people I care about is stop arranging outcomes and let consequences be consequences. He paused. I don't know how to do that. Because you've been managing everything since you were 16, she said. He looked at her. You told me, she reminded him. First bad decision. A long series. Skilled at managing consequences. She tilted her head. What was the first one? He was quiet long enough that she thought he wasn't going to answer. I was 16, he said. My mother was working 2 jobs and it wasn't enough, and I found a way to make it enough that she would never have accepted if she'd known. He looked at the tape. She didn't know. We kept the lights on. I told myself it was temporary. He paused. I've been telling myself things are temporary for 18 years. Cleopatra absorbed that. Does your mother know now? She asked. What you do? She knows enough to be frightened and not enough to understand, he said. That's deliberate, on my part. Does it work, keeping her at that distance? A long pause. No, he said. She just worries from a distance instead of up close. The worry is the same. I just don't have to watch it. That sounds lonely, she said, simply. Zion turned to look at her fully, and in the streetlight she could see the thing that his face did when she said true things to him. Not surprise exactly, not even the confirming expression she'd cataloged. Something more fundamental, like she kept locating things in him that he'd left in rooms he didn't open. It is, he said. Lonely is exactly what it is. They stood in the April evening while the crowd thinned and the police cruisers eventually moved and the block went back to ordinary. And they didn't speak for a while, but the silence was the full kind. Not the empty kind, the kind that meant both people were doing something useful inside it. Can I walk you home? He asked. She considered him. It's 1 block, she said. I know. She nodded. They walked. 1 block, 3 minutes. When he walked beside her with his hands in his jacket pockets and the gold thread dreads catching the streetlights, and she was aware of his presence the way she was aware of the city. Something large and complicated and undeniable, moving at its own pace beside her. At her building door, she stopped and turned. He was looking at her with that look, the looking at her look, direct and unhurried, and saying several things without using words for any of them. Your friend, she said. The one who was arrested. She paused. You're allowed to not fix it. You're allowed to love someone and not fix everything. He held her gaze. Who told you that? He said. No one, she said. I'm still learning it myself. She went inside, stood in the elevator going up and pressed her back against the wall and closed her eyes and felt, with absolute clarity, so for the first time, that she was in something. Not a situation anymore, not an arrangement, not a courtship with quotation marks around it. Something real, with two different people, which was its own impossible complication. That night she sat with the journal and opened to a new page, and for the first time didn't write any words at all. She drew a line down the center of the page instead, left side and right side, and sat with the divided page for a long time. Then she closed it without writing in either half. Not because she didn't know, because she was beginning to know, and the knowing was enormous, and she needed a little more time inside the not knowing before she let it become something she had to act on. Dearest viewers, she walked in with walls. Now there are two different cracks in two different places. Not one man showed her a wound he's been carrying for 16 years. One man showed her a loneliness he thought he'd made invisible. Both of them are changing because of her. The question isn't who she's falling for anymore. The question is what happens when she can't keep the two rooms separate. Drop in the comments, whose moment hit you harder? April ended on a Tuesday without asking anyone's permission. May arrived cold and bright, and Cleopatra went to work and came home and sat with her father and did the ordinary architecture of her life. And underneath all of it, something was shifting in the way that tectonic things shift. Invisibly, incrementally, until the ground is somewhere different than it used to be, and you can't identify the exact moment it moved. She had started to feel the weight of the two rooms, not in a dramatic way, in the quiet, cumulative way of someone carrying something in each hand that is individually manageable and collectively exhausting. Saturday mornings with Marcus, Thursday afternoons with Zion, the journal with the divided page she still hadn't written in. Kezia watching her with increasing patience and decreasing silence. Her father moving around the apartment with a cautious hopefulness that hurt to look at. The way he'd started asking if she wanted tea with a particular, careful brightness, like he was afraid to want too much. The weight wasn't guilt. She had done nothing wrong. The arrangement was open, agreed upon, established by all parties on the first Sunday. The weight was something else. The weight was the dawning, undeniable understanding that these were not two equal possibilities suspended in neutral balance. Something had tipped. She could feel it. The way you feel a lean before the fall, the body knowing before the mind confirms. She just couldn't yet say which way it was tipping, and the not saying was becoming its own kind of pressure. The break, when it came, didn't come from where she expected. It came from a Thursday evening in the second week of May. The weather finally capitulating to warmth, the kind of New York evening that arrived like an apology for winter, soft and golden, and full of people who'd forgotten what it felt like to be outside without a coat. She and Zion were walking. This had become a thing over the past 2 weeks. The bodega wall had graduated to actual walking, the two of them moving through the neighborhood in the early evening after her shift with no destination and no particular urgency. So talking about everything and nothing in the way they developed, the landscape-style conversations that roam freely and always ended somewhere unexpected. She was telling him about her mother's cooking, a particular recipe, groundnut soup, that she'd been trying to recreate from memory for 3 years without quite getting it right. And he was listening in his complete way, the way that made her feel like she was interesting rather than merely heard when his phone went off. He glanced at it. His expression shifted. "I need to take this," he said. "2 minutes." She nodded, moved to give him space, looked at a bodega flower display while he stepped a few feet away and spoke in a low, rapid voice she deliberately didn't try to parse. He came back in 90 seconds. "I have to go," he said. His voice was level, but his eyes had changed. They had the operational quality she'd seen glimpses of before. The part of him that ran a different kind of life. The part he mostly kept at a remove from her. "I'm sorry. Is everything okay?" A pause, brief, loaded. "It will be," he said, which was not the same as yes. A black SUV appeared at the corner. She hadn't seen it approach, and yet there it was, as though it had been summoned by a frequency she couldn't hear. Zion looked at her, and for a moment the operational quality receded, and it was just him. The him she'd spent all these Thursdays getting to know. Looking at her with something that had apology in it, and also something that had no name she'd learned yet. "Thursday," he said. "Thursday," she said. He got in the car. It moved. She stood on the warm May sidewalk and felt the evening change density without him in it. She walked home alone. She almost didn't check her phone until she got upstairs. She almost didn't see the message. It was from a number she didn't recognize. A New York number, no name. And it was brief, and it was a photograph, and she stood in the hallway outside her apartment door and looked at it for a very long time. The photograph was from earlier that evening. The timestamp said 6:47 p.m., which was during her walk with Zion. It showed the two of them on the sidewalk, her in the yellow dress she'd worn today, him beside her, close together, his head slightly inclined toward hers the way it did when he was listening. Beneath the photograph, one line of text. "Ask him who he was on the phone with. Ask him what the call was about. Oh, well, then decide if you know who you're actually walking with." No signature, no follow-up message. She stood in the hallway for a long time. She did not go inside immediately. She stood with the phone and the photograph and the message and let herself feel the full, unpleasant range of what it produced. Not just the obvious suspicion, which arrived first, but beneath it the thing the suspicion rested on: fear. The fear of having started to trust someone and having been naive to do so. The fear that the version of Zion she had been building in her mind over all these Thursdays was constructed from selective information, from the pieces he'd chosen to offer, while other pieces operated out of view. She knew who he was. She had never been naive about who he was. But knowing abstractly and feeling it concretely were two different things. When tonight they had closed the gap. She went inside, sat on her bed, did not text Zion, did not tell Cassia, did not write in the journal. Just sat with it, alone, the way she sat with hard things, directly, quietly, until she understood the shape of it well enough to decide what to do. She didn't have to wait as long as she expected. Friday morning, 8 a.m., her phone rang. Zion. She looked at it ring through twice before she answered. "I want to explain last night," he said. "Okay." The call was from someone in my operation. There was a situation involving territory that needed to be managed before it became something larger. He said it plainly, without embellishment or apology, the way he said everything. "Nobody was hurt. It's handled." I know about the call, she said. A pause. What do you know? She told him about the message, in the photograph, the text. A longer pause. Send me the number, he said. His voice had changed. The operational quality again, but sharper now, and underneath it something she hadn't heard from him before. Something that was almost anger except directed inward. Zion. Send me the number. I will, but that's not what I want to talk about. She moved to her window, looked at the Bronx morning. I want to talk about the fact that last night I remembered what your life actually is. Not the Thursday version, the whole version. Silence. I've never pretended otherwise, he said, carefully. No, she agreed. You haven't. You warned me. You were honest. I know that. She pressed her fingertips to the window glass. But there's a difference between knowing something and feeling it. And last night I felt it. She paused. As I felt what it would mean. To be with someone who gets calls that move him urgently into the dark, and where the only answer to is everything okay is it will be. The silence this time was longer and different. I understand, he said. His voice was low, quiet in a way that wasn't distance but the opposite. Something pulled very close and held carefully. I'm not ending anything, she said. I'm telling you where I am, because you asked me to tell you things accurately. I did, he said. I need some time to sit with it. Take it, he said, immediately. No negotiation, no counteroffer. Just take it. Like her pace was the only pace that counted. She closed her eyes briefly. Thank you, she said. After she hung up, she stood at the window for a while and felt the particular ache of caring about someone whose life carried a weight that love didn't automatically make lighter. Saturday came and she went to Marta's. She hadn't decided not to go. She'd considered it, had sat with the question of whether she should step back from both of them while she sorted through what the Friday phone call had deposited in her. But in the end, she'd gotten dressed and taken the subway and arrived at 8:14 and slid into the booth across from Marcus. He looked at her immediately with that recalibrating quality. Something happened, he said. I don't want to talk about it, she said. Can we just have coffee? Of course. They had coffee. He didn't ask. She appreciated the not asking, and also, somewhere underneath it, he felt the specific loneliness of being in a room with someone who was careful with her in ways that were considerate and also, sometimes, felt like distance dressed as respect. She was quiet for longer than usual, and he let her be, and at some point the letting her be tipped from considerate to its own kind of absence, and she felt it. Can I ask you something? She said. Yes. What do you actually want? She looked at him directly. Not the practical version, not the arrangement. What do you want, Marcus? From this, from... She gestured between them. Whatever this is. He was quiet. You, he said, simply. And then, because Marcus didn't do simple without immediately complicating it, but I'm aware that want without the right conditions isn't enough. I'm aware that I'm... He stopped. Say it, she said. Oh, and I'm not an easy person to be close to, he said. I've been told that. I know it. I've built my life in a configuration that keeps people at a managed distance, and I don't fully know how to dismantle that. He looked at his hands. I'm trying with you. I'm aware I'm trying imperfectly. You are, she said. But imperfect trying is still trying. He looked up. The Saturday mornings, she said. The article you sent, calling instead of texting, coming to the Bronx instead of making me come to you. She paused. I see it. I want you to know I see it. Something shifted in his face. That fractional expression, but sustained this time, not immediately recomposed. But, he said, because he was smart enough to hear the shape of the sentence. She was honest. I need to figure some things out, she said. Not about you specifically. About myself, about what I'm doing here and what I want and who I'm becoming in the middle of all of this. She paused. I think I need a week, maybe two. He absorbed that. She watched him absorb it, watch the controlled part of him register it as data and process it efficiently, and then watch the other part, the part that had told her about his mother, feel it. Okay, he said. I'll be here. I know, she said. She meant it as reassurance. He received it as something more. They finished their coffee, walked out, stood on Fordham Road. He looked at her with the two people expression, controlled and uncontrolled simultaneously. Cleopatra, he said. Don't, she said gently. Not yet. He nodded once. She walked to the subway. This time she didn't look back. She knew without looking that he was standing there. She knew the way you know the presence of something large and significant, not by looking directly at it, but by the way it changes the quality of the air. She went down the stairs. The 2 weeks she'd asked for were both longer and shorter than they should have been. She worked. She ate dinner with her father. She went to Sunday church with Casia's family the way she hadn't done since she was 15, and sat in the wooden pew and let the music do what music does. Locate things inside you that have gotten lost in the noise. She didn't reach out to either of them. Neither of them reached out to her, which she had asked for and which landed anyway, with a dull, specific weight. The particular ache of a silence you requested that arrives and still feels like absence. On the 10th day, Kezia came over without calling. Well, she brought food. Jollof rice from the Ghanaian place on Webster that they both pretended wasn't too expensive, and sat cross-legged on Cleopatra's bed while Cleopatra sat against the headboard with her knees pulled up, and they ate in the comfortable silence of long friendship. Talk, Kezia said eventually. Cleopatra ate a spoonful of rice. I'm scared, she said. Of what specifically? Of choosing wrong. Of choosing at all. She put the container down. Of wanting something I don't fully know how to have. Of being 18 and making a decision that belongs to someone older and wiser, and being neither of those things. She pulled out a thread on her blanket. Of letting someone in and having it be the thing that changes me. Not in a good way, in the way where you can't find yourself afterward. Kezia was quiet. Oh, your mother, she said. When your dad lost himself after she died. You've been afraid of that since you were 11. Cleopatra looked at her. Of loving someone so much, Kezia continued gently, that if something happens, you don't come back from it. The accuracy of it landed somewhere deep and quiet and true. Yes, Cleopatra said, in barely a voice. That's not a reason not to love someone, Cleo. I know. It's a reason to be careful. But you've been careful for 7 years and it hasn't made you less afraid. It's just made you lonely, Cleopatra said, the same word Zion had used about himself on a quiet Bronx evening, and that had lodged in her ever since. Yeah, Kezia said softly, lonely. They sat with that. Yet outside the window, the May evening was doing its beautiful, ordinary thing. The last of the sunlight on the water towers. A kid on a bicycle. The long blue hour before dark. I know which one, Cleopatra said. Kezia went completely still. I've known for a while, Cleopatra said. I just kept the 2 rooms because knowing meant deciding, and deciding meant being all the way in, Kezia said. Yes. A pause. And now? Kezia asked. Cleopatra looked at the window, at the evening light, at the city that had held her whole life and all her careful keeping of herself. And now I think, she said slowly, I think I'm ready to be all the way in. She didn't say which one, not yet, not even to Kezia, but she reached for her phone and she held it. And the name she thought of first, the name that arrived before she could arrange her thoughts into something more considered, the name that came like breath, like reflex, like something the body decides before the mind has finished its argument, was the same name it had been for weeks. She just hadn't been ready to let herself know it. She set the phone down. Tomorrow, she thought. Tomorrow she would do something about it. She asked for time, and they both gave it. Now the time is almost up. She knows which one. She's ready. But ready and brave are two different things, and there's still a night to get through before tomorrow comes. Do you think she made the right call? And which name do you think came first? Drop it below. The morning came the way she'd been waiting for it, certain and clear, with a kind of May morning that New York occasionally produced like an apology for everything else. Sunlight direct and unhesitating through her bedroom window. The city outside already in full voice. Cleopatra was up before it properly arrived. She lay in the early gray and felt the night's accumulated thinking settle into something solid, the way sediment settles after water has been disturbed, slowly until the bottom is visible again. She had slept, actually slept, for the first time in 2 weeks with the depth of someone who had made peace with something, even if the peace was complicated and came with its own weight. She knew. She had known last night with the phone in her hand and the name arriving like reflex, and she knew now with the morning light on her ceiling. And the knowing was enormous and terrifying. And also, underneath all of that, something that felt almost shockingly like relief. Like setting down something she'd been carrying so long, she'd forgotten it had weight. She got up, made coffee, stood at the kitchen window in her gray sleep shirt, and watched the Bronx wake up and thought about her mother. She did this sometimes, had a conversation with Ruth in her head, not in a grief-stricken way, but in a practical one, the way you consult someone whose judgment you trust. She thought about what her mother would say about all of this. The letter, the two men, the 2 rooms, the divided journal page, the 10 weeks of Thursdays and Saturdays, and everything that had accumulated inside them. She thought Ruth would have laughed first, a warm, full laugh, the kind she'd had, and then she thought Ruth would have said, "You already know, Cleo. You've known. Stop organizing your feelings and just have them." She drank her coffee. Then she went to get dressed. She called Kezia at 8. "I'm doing it today," she said. A pause on the line. Kezia clearly mid-morning routine, a toothbrush being set down judging by the sound. "Today, today? Today. Cleo." The sound of Kezia sitting down somewhere. "Are you sure?" "I've been sure for weeks. I've just been processing the sureness." She pulled a shirt from her closet. "I can't keep 2 rooms. It's not fair to anyone, including me." "What are you going to say?" "I don't know exactly." She held the shirt up, considered it, put it back. "I know what I feel. I'll find the words when I'm in front of them." "Them plural?" Kezia's voice sharpened slightly. "You're going to both of them today." One conversation ends something. One conversation starts something. She found the shirt she wanted. A deep burgundy, soft fabric. The kind of thing she'd bought for herself 3 months ago and hadn't worn yet. "Both need to happen." "Which one first?" Cleopatra paused. "The harder one," she said. She texted Marcus at 9 a.m. "Can we meet today?" "Not Marta's. Somewhere with more space." "I need to talk to you." He replied in 4 minutes, which she noted. Marcus Hale, who managed empires, had replied in 4 minutes on a Sunday morning. Riverside Park, 11 a.m. The bench near the 79th Street entrance. She arrived at 10:58. He was already there. Of course he was. Marcus was constitutionally incapable of being anything other than early. Sitting on the bench in a dark coat over a simple black shirt, the Hudson behind him, the park doing its beautiful Sunday thing around him, with a complete indifference to the weight of what was about to happen. He stood when he saw her. She walked toward him in the burgundy shirt and dark coat and felt the full significance of the moment. Not with dread, but with the quiet gravity of someone who understood that some conversations mark a before and after, and there was nothing to be done about that except to have them honestly. She sat beside him on the bench. He sat. The river moved. A jogger went past. Somewhere behind them, a child was objecting to something with considerable energy. You know what I'm going to say, she said. Oh, I have a strong hypothesis, he said. His voice was very controlled. The control was working hard. She turned to look at him fully. You are one of the most interesting people I've ever talked to, she said. And I mean that completely. These Saturday mornings they've changed something in me. The way I think, the way I talk, the questions I ask. She held his gaze. You've been generous with me in ways I don't think come naturally to you, and I want you to know that I saw every one of them. He was looking at the river. His jaw was set. But, he said, but, she said gently, what I feel for you, it's real and it's genuine, and it's also, she paused, found the honest word, safe, in a way that I think we both know means something. I care for you the way you care for something that is good and true and doesn't move in me the way, she stopped, the way someone else does, he said. Yes, a long silence. The river went on, being the river. Is it Zion, he said. Not a question, a confirmation being sought, because Marcus Hale processed accurate information better than comfortable ambiguity. Yes, she said. He nodded once, looked at his hands. She watched him do what she'd watched him do all these Saturdays. Organize, compose, find the controlled version of the feeling, and move it to a manageable location. But then he did something she hadn't expected. He laughed, small, short, with no humor in it, but also no bitterness, something more complicated than either. I called my mother, he said. She blinked. "And what?" "The week after you told me to." He was still looking at his hands. "We talked for 2 hours. First real conversation in a long time." He paused. "She cried. I nearly did." He glanced at her sideways. "I wanted to tell you that. I've been holding on to telling you that." Cleopatra felt her throat tighten. "Marcus, don't," he said, with a slight smile. The real one. The one she collected over 6 Saturdays. "I'm not telling you for that reason. I'm telling you because you were right, and you should know that you were right." He straightened, looked at the river. "You made me better at a thing. That's not nothing." "It's not nothing," she agreed softly. They sat for another few minutes in the kind of silence that exists between people who have been genuinely close and are now rearranging what that closeness looks like. "He's going to have to deserve you," Marcus said finally, quietly, without performance. "I'll hold him to that," she said. He stood first, helped her up, one last habitual, small courtesy that she accepted. They stood facing each other by the river on a Sunday morning, and she looked at him, this controlled, complicated, increasingly human man, with something that was warm and final simultaneously. "The 10-year plan," she said. "My father's debt." "Stands," he said, immediately. "Zero interest. Nothing changes. That was never conditional." She nodded. "Thank you." He put his hands in his coat pockets. 814, he said. She looked at him. "You were never once actually 814, he said. "You were always 812, 813. You sat in the car. I saw you from the window twice." The not quite smile. "Ush, you just needed to establish the minute." She laughed. "We're a real one," surprised out of her. "Don't tell anyone," she said. "Privileged information," he said. She walked away through the park. She didn't look back this time either. But she was smiling, and the smile had sadness in it, and the sadness had warmth in it, and the whole complicated mixture of it felt right, felt like the truth of something. She took the subway to Harlem. She had never been to Zion's home. didn't have his address. What she had was his number, and she stood on the 125th Street platform after getting off the train and typed, "I need to see you. Today. Where are you?" She watched the three dots appear immediately. Then, "I'm home. I'll send you the address." Then the address, a street she recognized, a building number, the sixth floor. She walked there. It took 12 minutes, and she spent them thinking about everything and then deliberately thinking about nothing. The way you clear a surface before you put something new on it. The building was the one she'd expected. Unremarkable exterior, the kind of Harlem building that had been there 50 years and would be there 50 more, indifferent to what happened inside it. She buzzed. He let her up without speaking through the intercom. The elevator opened onto a hallway and he was already at the door. He had been home. She could tell from the loose, dark gray sweatpants and the black t-shirt, the dreads down and free, no gold threads, the most undressed version of him she'd seen. And it made him look different than all the other versions. Less like a thing the city had produced for a specific purpose, more like a person. He stepped back to let her in. The apartment was the same organized contradiction as him. Clean lines, intentional, a few books stacked with genuine care, a plant on the windowsill that was actually alive and thriving, a framed photograph on one wall she glanced at and recognized as Harlem in the 70s. His mother probably, same eyes. "Sit," he said, "or stand, whatever you need." She stood. He stood too, near the window, giving her space, the way he always gave her exactly the space she needed without being asked. The city was behind him again. Harlem this time, not Midtown. And he was watching her with those patient, unhurried eyes. "I talked to Marcus this morning," she said. Something moved in his expression. "Okay," he said. "I told him I wasn't choosing him." She held Zion's gaze. "Whitey, I need you to understand that's not about the comparison. It's not about measuring. It's about what I know to be true for me, and what I know to be true for me is—" Her voice stopped, not because she'd lost the words, because he had moved, just slightly, just a fraction of a step forward. And the fraction meant something. The fraction was the most movement she had ever seen him make toward her unbidden. And it was that small shift that broke whatever was holding the words back. "You," she said. "It's been you. It's been you since the bodega wall and the mango juice, and you telling me you warned me because you wanted me to know you accurately." Her voice was steady and full simultaneously, the way voices are when you are saying something true that costs something. "I've been keeping 2 rooms because I was afraid. Not of you specifically, of the size of what I feel, of being 18 and feeling something this large and not knowing what to do with it." Zion was very still. "I know what you do," she said. "I know what your life is. I know what those calls mean. I'm not pretending any of that away." She paused. "But I also know who you are on a Thursday afternoon on a wall in the Bronx, and who you are when you talk about your mother, and who you are when you say true things simply because they're true." She breathed. "And I would rather be with the whole complicated version of you than the safe, simple version of anyone else." The room was very quiet. Outside, Harlem was doing its Sunday thing. Unhurried, alive, the particular music of a neighborhood that had survived everything and intended to continue. Zion crossed the remaining space between them. He didn't rush it. He was, as he was in everything, unhurried. Like he had decided long ago that things worth arriving at deserved to be arrived at fully, not in a hurry. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could see the gold threads in his dreads and the complete directness of his eyes and the expression that was now entirely unguarded. Not the confirming expression, not the operational stillness, not any of the versions she'd cataloged, just him. looking at her like she was the most accurate thing he had ever hypothesized. You said you've known since the bodega wall, he said, low, careful, like the words mattered too much to say quickly. Yes, she said. That was 2 months ago. I know. You made me wait 2 months. I made myself wait 2 months, she said. You were just adjacent to the waiting. Something broke open in his expression. The corner of his mouth, the slight easing she'd seen once or twice that she now understood, was the closest thing he had to a full smile, and it was warm and rare and entirely for her. Adjacent to the waiting, he repeated. Don't make it a thing. It's already a thing. She laughed, surprised, real, the kind that came up from somewhere low and honest. And then he was laughing too, quietly, and they were standing close in his Harlem apartment with the Sunday city outside, and 2 months of careful distance finally gone. He raised his hand slowly, giving her time to see it, to decide, and touched her face, just his palm against her cheek, warm and still. She leaned into it slightly. She hadn't decided to do that. Her body had simply decided. Cool Cleopatra, he said. I know, she said. He looked at her for a long moment, reading her the way he always read her completely. And then he said, I'm going to spend a long time deserving this. I know that too, she said. Dearest viewers, she chose. She walked into the harder conversation first and walked out of it with her heart intact. She walked into the right one and said every true thing she'd been holding for 2 months. He waited. She arrived. And now there is only one more thing left. Drop in the comments. Were you right about who she'd choose? And did the Saturday morning break your heart a little too? The Sunday after the Harlem apartment was different from all the Sundays before it. Cleopatra noticed it in the quality of the morning. Something lighter, something that moved differently through the apartment. Unlike the air pressure had shifted in the night and adjusted to something more habitable. She woke up and the first thing she felt was not the weight of undecided things, just the quiet, ordinary morning and underneath it, warm and solid and new. The knowledge of what had happened yesterday and what it meant. She lay in it for a while, let herself have it fully, the way she had been practicing, feeling things instead of organizing them, being inside the experience instead of administering it from a careful distance. Then she made coffee and went to sit across from her father. Emmanuel was already at the kitchen table when she came in. Early riser always in the particular way of men who had spent too many years with anxious dawns and had never quite recovered the ability to sleep past them. He had his tea. His good coat was hung on the chair back, which meant he'd already been out and come back. The morning walk he'd taken every day since Ruth died, like a form of conversation with absence. He looked up when she sat down. He looked at her face. And then, because he was her father, because he had known her face for 18 years, because some knowledge lives below language, he set down his tea. Cleo, he said. I know what I want, she said. I've made my decision. He waited. She told him. Not everything. Not the hour in Zion's apartment with the Sunday city outside, and the palm warm against her cheek, and the way the room had held them both like something precious and overdue. Those things were hers for now, but she told him the shape of it. Who? Why? What she understood about the complications and why the complications didn't change the answer. Emmanuel listened, really listened, in the way he had been trying to do more since this all began. The way Cleopatra suspected was part of something shifting in him too. The slow, difficult work of a man trying to reassemble himself into someone his daughter could rely on. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Zion is, he started. I know what Zion is, she said, gently, firmly. I know his life. I know what it carries. I went in with my eyes open, Daddy. I came out the same way. Your mother, He stopped. Would have wanted me to love someone who sees me completely, she said. That's what you told me about her when you used to talk about her, that she saw people, that she made everyone feel real. She held her father's eyes. He does that. For me, Emmanuel was quiet. His hands around his mug were still. The shaking she'd noticed over the past months seemed less this morning. Or maybe she was looking for different things. The debt, he started. Marcus has arranged the 10-year plan, she said. Zero interest. I confirmed it yesterday. She paused. And Zion, I haven't discussed it yet, but I will. On my terms, not as part of any arrangement. Her father looked at her. When did you grow up? He said. Quietly. Not quite a question. I've been grown for a while, she said. You just needed to let yourself see it. He pressed his lips together, nodded. She reached across the table and covered his hands with hers. Both of them, her dark hands over his, the way she used to when she was small and the world felt too large. We're going to be okay, she said. He turned his hands over and held hers. Yes, he said, I believe that. It was the first time in years she had heard him say, I believe about something, and mean it without qualification. She texted Zion at 10 a.m. Are you free this afternoon? The response came in under a minute. For you? Yes. She read it twice, felt the warmth of it move through her. The simplicity, the lack of strategy, the pure, uncomplicated answer of a man who had spent a lot of his life being complicated and had apparently decided that with her, he was going to be otherwise. Bronx, she wrote back. My territory this time. Tell me where. She thought about it. Then she sent him the name of the park 2 blocks from her building. A small one, unremarkable, the kind that locals knew and tourists didn't, with a bench near the east entrance that faced the open stretch of grass and got the afternoon sun. She and her mother had come here on Saturdays when she was small, had sat on that bench and fed the pigeons, even though the sign said not to, and Ruth had said the sign isn't for people who need the feeding, it's for people who don't, and today we need the feeding. She had not been back since Ruth died. She went today. She got there first, deliberately, and sat on the bench in the afternoon May light and felt the memory of her mother in the familiar angle of the sun, the particular smell of the grass, the way the park held the city's noise at a slight remove and gave you a pocket of something quieter inside the loud. Hello, Mama, she thought. Look at what I did. Zion arrived at 2 p.m. She saw him from a distance, crossing the park in the unhurried way of a man who had somewhere specific to be and wasn't going to rush getting there. He was in dark trousers and a deep brown shirt, dreads loosened down, the gold threads catching the afternoon sun, and she watched him come and felt the now familiar thing that happened to her equilibrium when she watched him move through space. The tilt, the warm disruption, the sense of her own certainty about it all deepening with each step he took toward her. He reached the bench, looked at her, looked at the park. Your territory, he said. My territory, she confirmed. He sat beside her. Not the careful bodega wall distance of the early Thursdays. Beside her. Close enough that their arms were almost touching, and the almost was its own kind of acknowledgement. And they sat for a while without speaking, watching the park do its ordinary Sunday afternoon thing. Children, dogs, someone attempting a kite without sufficient wind, a man reading a novel with his shoes off in the grass. I grew up 2 blocks from here, she said. I know, he said. Then, your father told me, before everything became what it became. He used to talk about the neighborhood, about raising you here. She looked at him. What else did he tell you? That you were brilliant, he said simply. That you were going to be something extraordinary. That he worried he wasn't giving you what you needed to get there. He paused. He talked about you the way people talk about things they're in awe of and slightly afraid of simultaneously. Cleopatra looked at the grass. He said that. Essentially, Zion glanced at her. He was right. She felt the warmth of it and also the ache of it. The complicated love of knowing your father saw you even when he couldn't show it, that the paralysis was not absence, but a different shape of the same thing. I came here with my mother, she said. This bench. She looked at the park. We used to feed the pigeons against the rules. He smiled. The real one, the rare one, and let her tell it, so she told it. Not just the pigeon story, but the others. Saturday mornings at the park, Ruth's voice, the yellow dress in the Accra photograph, the groundnut soup she hadn't been able to recreate, the way her mother had made everyone feel real. She told it without the flat protective delivery she used for mother sentences in general conversation. She told it with the actual texture of it, the warmth and the grief and the 7 years of holding both. Zion listened. He didn't fix it, didn't reach for the right words, didn't tell her it was going to be okay in the reflexive way that people did when they couldn't tolerate sitting inside someone else's pain. He just stayed completely, attended to her the way he attended to everything. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. My mother used to take me to Marcus Garvey Park, he said, Saturday mornings. He was looking at the kite man across the grass. She'd bring this specific juice, the mango kind, and we'd sit and she'd tell me about Jamaica, about her mother, her grandmother, the women in her line. He paused. She wanted me to know where I came from, so I'd know where I was going. He was quiet. I don't think I listened the way I should have. I was 16 and I was already elsewhere, already making decisions that were taking me somewhere she couldn't follow. Did you tell her that? Cleopatra asked. That you wish you'd listened better? No, you should. He looked at her. I know, he said. The same words, the same register he'd used on the phone that morning after the letter. I know, but with something different under them now. Something that was moving toward action instead of filing it away. She held his gaze. I mean it. I know you mean it, he said. That's why it's going to happen. The sun moved slightly. The kite finally caught something and rose with a small triumph. The man on the grass turned a page. I need to ask you something, Cleopatra said. Ask. She turned to face him more fully on the bench. The call that Thursday, the situation that needed managing. She paused. I need to know, honestly, that you understand what asking me to be in your life means. What you're asking me to carry, because I'm not asking you to be someone different. I'm asking you to be honest about what the life actually is. He looked at her for a long moment. The life is complicated, he said. It has been for a long time, and it won't simplify overnight. He was direct, as always, unvarnished. But I've been thinking, since the Thursday you told me you needed time, I've been thinking about what it would mean to build something different. Not immediately, not completely, but directionally. He paused. I've been in this for a long time because I didn't have a reason to consider the exit. His eyes were steady on hers. I have a reason now. I'm not an exit strategy, she said. No, he said. You're a reason to want one. The distinction mattered and they both knew it. Okay, she said. Okay, he said. They stayed on the bench for another hour. The sun moved. The park thinned. The kite came down. Somewhere nearby, a child laughed at something with the complete whole-body commitment of children who haven't yet learned to laugh partially. At some point, she couldn't have said exactly when. The almost touching of their arms became actual touching, his arm against hers, warm and steady and present. Neither of them acknowledged it. Neither of them moved away from it. It was the kind of contact that said everything that the 2 months of careful distance had been building toward and required no commentary. She thought about the journal page, wide the line down the center, the two halves she'd never written in. Tonight, she thought, she would write in one of them. As the afternoon tipped toward evening, and the park light went golden and long, Zion reached into the pocket of his dark trousers and produced, with a simplicity that was so characteristic of him she almost laughed, a bottle of mango juice. She looked at it, looked at him. "You brought mango juice to the park," she said. "I come prepared," he said. "You came to my neighborhood with mango juice." "Your territory," he said. "I adapted." She took the bottle. It was the specific brand, the one from the Burnside bodega, the one that had started all the Thursdays. She looked at it and felt the full arc of everything, from the first Thursday on the wall when she'd barely let herself notice what she was feeling. Through all the Thursdays, through the letter and the Sunday dinner, and the 2 rooms and the divided page, and Marcus at Riverside Park, and the Harlem apartment yesterday, and her father's hands in hers this morning. All of it, collected here on a May afternoon on her mother's bench in her neighborhood park, with the gold threads catching the last of the light. She opened the bottle. "To my territory," she said. He opened his. "To your territory," he said. They drank. And then she was laughing again, the real kind, the full body kind. And he was making the corner of the mouth expression that was his version of the same thing. And the park was golden around them, and the city was enormous behind them. And she was 18 years old and in love for the first time, and it was terrifying and wonderful and completely, entirely hers. Was she had not been a prize. She had not been a resolution. She had been the one who decided. And she had decided here, in her neighborhood, on her mother's bench, in the May light, with mango juice and a man who had warned her accurately and waited patiently and arrived, as he always did, without rushing. She reached over without thinking and tucked one of the gold-threaded dreads behind his shoulder where it had fallen forward. Her hands stilled there for a moment. He turned to look at her. Neither of them said anything. The city went on being the city, vast and indifferent and magnificent. And they went on being 2 people in the middle of it who had found each other at the collision point of complicated circumstances and had, against various odds, arrived at something true. He covered her hand with his. She let him. "I will not be a prize," she had written in her journal on a Tuesday night after an envelope arrived in a locked apartment. She was not. She was the one who chose. And this was what she chose. 6 weeks later, Emmanuel Mensah received a formal document from Marcus Hale's company confirming the 10-year restructured payment plan. 0 interest, the first payment not due until the following January. A cover note in Marcus's precise handwriting that said simply, "A promise is a promise." M.H. Emmanuel folded it carefully and put it in the kitchen drawer where he kept important things, and sat down at the table and put his head in his hands and quietly, privately, when allowed himself to cry in the way he hadn't since Ruth's funeral. Not from sorrow this time, but from the complicated, overwhelming relief of a man who had nearly lost everything and found himself somehow, not at the bottom, but at a beginning. He made tea. He drank it while it was still hot, which was something he almost never did. Small things, the return of small things. That same evening, Cleopatra sat on Zion's couch in the Harlem apartment. She had been here 4 times now, and each time the apartment had revealed something new. The way places do when you're spending real time in them, with her journal open on her knees. She turned to the page with the line down the center, the 2 blank halves. She looked at it for a moment. Then she drew a single horizontal line through the vertical one, crossing it out, canceling the division. And on the unified page beneath it she wrote, "I am not 2 rooms. I am one person who chose, and the choosing feels like coming home." She closed the journal. From the kitchen she could hear Zion making something. The specific sounds of someone who cooked with the same deliberateness they brought to everything, unhurried, intentional, the occasional quiet percussion of a person comfortable in their own space and comfortable having her in it. She tucked her feet under her on the couch. She had her mother's photograph in her purse. She always had it now. The yellow dress in the acre sunlight and Ruth laughing at whoever was behind the camera. She thought about Ruth, thought about the way she had always made everyone feel real, thought about being 18 and knowing for the first time what it felt like to be seen completely by someone, the whole of her, the brilliant and the careful and the guarded and the grieving and the growing. And to have that seeing feel not like exposure, but like arrival. I see you, she thought toward the photograph. I think you would have liked him. He brings the right flowers. From the kitchen, Zion said, "You want mango juice with this, or are we adults now and having water?" "That's not a real choice," she called back. "It's absolutely a real choice." "Mango juice." "Obviously," he said, and she could hear the corner of the mouth thing in his voice, and it made her smile at the apartment wall in the uncomplicated way of someone who had finally stopped administering their feelings and was just having them all the way in. Dearest viewer, she came in with a letter she didn't ask for, and a line she wrote in a journal, and 2 months of Thursdays and Saturdays, and all the complicated, terrifying work of learning to let someone see you. She walked in as a girl, carrying everything alone. She walks out as a woman who chose, fully, clearly on her own terms. And she brought the right flowers. She always did. Tell me in the comments, did this end the way you hoped? And what part of Cleopatra's story stayed with you the most? Thank you for watching until the end. Cleopatra walked in with walls and walked out with a whole heart. If this story moved you, if you found yourself on a Thursday or a Saturday or a bench in a park, you're in the right place. We tell stories here, the real kind. Welcome to the family. The end.